Greetings everyone, we're back with another episode of theorising and analysing elements from the Sonic universe. This time we'll be looking at a certain character from Sonic Forces.
Oh, great. Forces. Man, the more I think about that game, the more it just continues to piss me off even more. So, let's fuel up that anger again by talking about what I feel is the second most pointless character in the game's story, Infinite.
Or as I like to call him, the Kylo Ren of the Sonic universe.
So, for this episode, we'll be doing a character analysis on Infinite as a whole, who he is, his backstory, and talking about his abilities. So let's see if this guy really was that important to the story in Sonic Forces, or if he was just about as pointless as classic Sonic's inclusion. Infinite might look cool in design, but that's all the positivity I have for this character. I mentioned before that the guy is way too forgiving when it comes to him fighting his opponents. He fights against some civilians, and then lets the Avatar go. He fights Sonic, and then he lets him go. He fights the Avatar again, and then he lets him go. Again. At least the third one made more sense because the Avatar character had the Phantom Ruby prototype to counterattack Infinite. But every other time, he has his opponents right where he wants them, and then he's like, okay, I'm bored, see ya. He's just way too cocky with himself sometimes. If this is supposed to be the new dark and edgy villain, then he wouldn't be that forgiving. He'd finish them off right there and now. What difference would it make if he decided to kill off a few random bodies early before the big master plan?
I was pretty disappointed with Infinite as well. At first, I thought he was going to be the Darth Vader to Eggman, being his enforcer of the Eggman Empire and hunting down anyone who would defy him, as well as keeping the oppressed citizens in line. Instead, we've got a Kylo Ren OC who tries to sound edgy and cool wearing a mask and has a hissy fit when being called weak. Hell, the real Kylo Ren is more competent. If I have to be honest, he would be a more of a threat if they brought back that cliche from the old Sonic 3D games where he could usurp Eggman and have to face him at full power. Now when I think of him, I think of that Game Grumps clip where they fight him as he goes, "I will destroy you."
Also, is it just me, or does Infinite sound, dull?
This wasn't part of my agenda, but I'm always happy to crush a hero. And with that, the disposal of the Phantom Ruby prototypes is complete. I'm quite displeased about this, Doctor.
So you're the big hero, whatever. Oh, you decided to do that, whatever. I'm gonna do something, Yeah, I don't know, just watching these cutscenes several times, I feel like every dialogue he says, he's just bored out of his mind most of the time. And then we have his death scene, or something, which is very anticlimactic, because to me, it always came off like this.
I have to go now. My planet needs me.
Well, doesn't make that much of a difference. We won't be seeing him again in another Sonic game anyway. Well, maybe outside of a few cameos here and there. So, we've covered Infinite in general. Now let's take a look at his past during the events of Episode Shadow and the Rise of Infinite webcomic that was made for the game. In the episode, we mostly see Infinite with the mask on and just mostly mocking and teasing Shadow. However, we do get a cutscene of him before all of this where he has an encounter with Shadow and loses. Then he whines that he's not weak, dons the new mask and Ruby, and that's it. Really? That one fight is what set him off to be this evil threat? That's very pathetic. I was hoping we'd get a little more of his past, show a little more of him, like why Infinite snapped after Shadow's fight. Did it trigger some kind of dramatic experience he had? Nope, it doesn't. Now, I'm not expecting an hour-long cutscene telling us everything about the character. It could be simple, like after Shadow defeats him and leaves, he would say something like, defeated. Again. For years I've been beaten and neglected, but no more! I'll show him and this world of my true power. And there you go. It adds more of a punch to his backstory. He had a rough life all of his time and is sick of dealing with it for years. Bam! All you need to know.
Something like that would give Infinite more of a purpose, and it would easily explain why he wanted to be stronger, and why he'd still go along with Robotnik's plan of ripping off Majora's mask.
It's definitely a lot better than just listening to him saying, I'm not weak, wah, 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 where's my blankie, I want my blankie, wah, 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 wah. In some ways, he could have been more like a sympathetic villain for my idea, but I don't know what people would think about it, but hey, it could work. There's also something about him being the leader of the Jackal Squad, but the game never explains this or even shows us who they are. They're about as non-existent as the Resistant branches in the game. I guess one thing that kind of works for Infinite is that he has a bit of a mystery vibe, since we never see his actual face in the game. Well, unless you're playing the Japanese version. So, in the end, all I get out of this backstory cutscene is that Infinite is nothing more than a crybaby, and Shadow is to blame for the events and forces. All because he kicked him in the face. Bleh. But I guess it doesn't matter, because the main game seems to heavily imply that Infinite is just another one of Robotnik's creations, rather than a mercenary that he hired. And to throw more insult to injury, this sets up some kind of rivalry between Infinite and Shadow that goes absolutely nowhere. I mean, Shadow doesn't even mention this encounter with Infinite in the main game. You know, episode Shadow's starting to feel empty and meaningless the more I think about it.
But now we get to Rise of Infinite, one of the official webcomics for the game. Comics or short films made to advertise a product usually gives us some more information on the lore and its characters. This comic shows us what Infinite looked like before he put on the mask, and we also get to see the Jackal Squad in action, like in this scene, and in this scene, and... Wait, that's it? Only 2 panels? Yeesh. And I thought Chaos had it worse with his limited screen time.
The problem with this webcomic in particular is that it's giving us the introduction to the Phantom Ruby and Infinite, these 2 elements all squeezed into this webcomic that's only 6 pages long. The other issues had a more tighter focus for what little pages they had. First issue was about the Rookie, the second issue was about Knuckles planning to create the Resistance, and the third issue focused on Team Dark's undercover mission, even if Episode Shadow contradicts the settings. They should have taken these elements and make them their own separate issues, one only focusing on the Phantom Ruby, and one only focusing on Infinite. That way we'd have more room to flesh out his past, his motives, and his interactions with Jackal Squad. But nope, the Jackal Squad barely gets any screen time and almost no interactions with Infinite, to the point where it's hard for me to take this guy seriously as a fearless leader. And I highly doubt these characters will be showing up in IDW Sonic, seeing as how they never bothered mentioning Infinite during their recap of Sonic Forces. Well, okay, scratch that. They briefly mentioned the Jackal Squad in issue 12, but other than that, yeah, that's all we're getting about these characters. Oh, here's another quick update. Apparently, Infinite is not allowed to be featured in IDW Sonic because Sega said so. Yeah, great, it's the whole Eggman Nega's not allowed to be featured in Archie Sonic for no good reason all over again. Yeah. But since we're going with the whole primary and secondary canon logic for these comics, then it looks like Infinite really is dead. But considering how much wasted potential the guy had, it's not that big of a loss anyway. Everything about him needed to be completely rewritten instead of trying to feature him in an expanded universe. So, besides being the leader of Team No One Cares, what makes Infinite special? What kind of powers does he have that makes him stand out from the rest? Well, in the webcomic he has a sword, looks cool, you never seen a major character in the main games wielding swords. Only one problem, aside from being a webcomic exclusive, this contradicts his actions in the game, because we see him more as a physical fighter rather than a swordsman. He throws punches and kicks to attack, and yeah, that's it. And this happens even after he already has the Phantom Ruby equipped. His sword doesn't even appear anywhere in the game, not even as a fancy cosmetic decoration for the Avatar character. So, where did it go? I don't know, maybe he got bored and decided to eat the sword while Robotnik was upgrading him.
He did use his sword to slice a robot and hit the Phantom Ruby to trigger its power, but even if he never had a sword and used his fists, we'll still get the same results, and it still makes the weapon completely pointless. That's like if Mario was given a gun, but doesn't use it to shoot people and just shows it off. Oh well, why bother having a weapon when you can just use the Phantom Ruby to do all the work for you?
Ah yes, the Phantom Ruby, a mysterious jewel that can create illusions that feel real, and it is Infinite that has the power to do it. And so can the Avatar character, and Dr. Robotnik, and Metal Sonic, and some random egg robos. So, yeah, does it really make you that special if anyone can easily use this magical MacGuffin? But he can use the Phantom Ruby to create null space, which is about as threatening as entering and exiting a frickin' door. Robotnik has already used it a few times, and was able to overclock its power at one point, which just makes Infinite even more worthless. I mean, sure, the Avatar character was using a prototype, but they never explain how its powers are different and what limitations it has compared to the real thing. It's nothing more than a carbon copy. But to be fair, the prototype Phantom Ruby does only work for a specific person to wield it, so there's that, I guess.
Why does he even need some random guy to have the ruby glued to his chest and be his lackey anyway? Since there's no limits, he can easily use it to create any kind of creature to aid him. We've seen that with Shadow, Chaos, etc., so he can do more than just those guys. Heck, he could just clone himself a million times and that would be a more bigger threat.
Well, there were times Robotnik didn't get along with his past self in Generations, so maybe it wouldn't be that great of an idea. But yeah, if this is supposedly the 25th anniversary game for Sonic, and you have this magical item that can create anything, then just go all out with it. Make levels more difficult, like fusing past levels into this mishmash of construction stuff. Create some illusions of the heroes to make the real heroes start having doubts and not trusting each other. Bring back more of Sonic's past foes and rivals. Bring back some previous robot battles that can run on their own but perform new abilities. Now, I'm not expecting everyone to appear, but I would much prefer more variety. Having only 4 characters and then copy and paste those same enemies to make an army is very lazy, especially when half of them get killed off screen and you don't even get to encounter them. And it just feel more like, oh hey, it's Shape the Character. You all remember Shape the Character, right? He does Shape the Character things. Yeah. Oh well, at least we still have Sonic Runners celebrating the Hedgehog's history and... Oh. Well, at least there's Sonic's story in LEGO Dimensions. At least that was a better anniversary game to the franchise than what this game tried to do. And that wraps up Infinite, a character who's nothing more than a crybaby behind a scary mask with elements of his backstory contradicting each other. And after all that, I still consider him to be a pointless character. And what's frustrating about it is all because of that damn Phantom Ruby. It's heavily underutilized in the game. A ruby with strange and unlimited power, given to some sap who doesn't do much with it outside of just copying and pasting. And seeing as how other people have been able to use its power, it doesn't really make Infinite that special. As for what we would do to fix the character, well, we'll save our thoughts for that for another time when we eventually get around to discussing about how we would rewrite the story to Sonic Forces.
And now a question for our audience. What do you think of Infinite? Was he really needed in this story? Let us know in the comments.
And please don't write down comments just saying, he's important to the story because he's my favorite character. Now, be a little more specific about that. As in, challenge us on if there are any important details that we miss in this video, or discussing a more alternative way on viewing how Infinite was used in the game's story. Well, that's it for now, so see ya.